just a magnificent looking animal. It's only 3 meters long. Didn't have a mark on it. Gave us an opportunity to tag her, and he placed his tag perfect.
Something bigger than a great white was hunting in these waters. I know how that sounds because the great white is supposed to be the end of the line, the one animal nothing else hunts. But off the coast of southwestern Australia, scientists tagged a fully grown great white, a 500-pound apex predator in her prime. And 4 months later, what they pulled back from the deep was proof that something out there had been hunting her. Something larger, something we have never named, never filmed, and were never supposed to believe was real. And the only thing it left behind was 2 numbers.
I am never going back in the water.
Me either. No way.
That's it.
The shark that vanished. To understand how we know any of that, you have to go back to 2003. Off the coast of southwestern Australia, the country's national science agency, the CSIRO, is running the first large-scale great white tagging study those waters have ever seen, built to map where these animals go and what they do when no one is watching. A filmmaker named Dave Riggs is part of it, there to capture all of it. They pull alongside a healthy 9-foot female. She weighs somewhere around 500 pounds. She has a presence in the water the crew never quite shakes, a kind of swagger. And somebody starts calling her Alpha. The name sticks. 9 feet is not small, and I need you to hold on to that. A 500-pound great white is not a pup nosing around the edge of its range. This is a fully grown apex predator, the kind of animal that has sat at the very top of the ocean food chain for millions of years and never once had to look over its shoulder. The device they fixed to Alpha is a data logger. Picture a small, rugged recorder built to do one quiet job for months at a time. It logs depth. It logs the temperature of the water around it. It logs light and movement, second by second, and stores all of it internally. It is not broadcasting anything live. It just waits. And then, on a preset day, it detaches, floats to the surface, and transmits everything it has gathered up to a satellite, so the team can finally reconstruct where Alpha went and what she lived through. That was the plan anyway. Get the tag back, read the story, learn something new about where these sharks travel. What came back instead was something none of them were prepared to read. The only witness. Here is the thing you have to understand about that little device. It is the only witness. No camera follows Alpha out there. No one is watching. Whatever happens to her in those months happens in total privacy. There is no boat trailing her, no diver in the water, no second tag for a second opinion. Just one small recorder, alone with her in the dark. And the only account that will ever exist is the one written inside it. 4 months after they tag her, it comes back. Not by satellite first, but physically. Washed up on a beach roughly 2.5 miles from the spot where they attached it. The recorder is recovered. The data goes up on a screen, and Riggs is there when they pull it. Everyone in the room expecting the ordinary. Lazy diving patterns, temperature drifting up and down, the slow loops of a big shark working its territory. That is not what the recorder says. What Riggs sees instead are 2 readings sitting side by side that, taken together, should not be able to exist in the same animal at the same time. He reads them once and assumes a malfunction. He reads them again, he pulls other people in, and they read them. And nobody can make the numbers say anything other than what they say. This is the moment on that screen. This is the thing he will still be turning over in his head a decade later. 2 numbers. That is all it takes. And the moment Riggs lets himself understand what those 2 numbers mean together, this stops being a research study and turns into a question that will haunt him for years. But before I show them to you, you need to understand exactly what kind of animal Alpha was, because it is the only way the numbers will hit you the way they hit that room. What we know. Most people understand in some vague way that great whites are dangerous without ever really sitting with what that means. A great white is not just a big fish with sharp teeth. It is the product of millions of years of refinement, sanded down by the ocean into something close to perfect. The largest ones push past 20 feet and weigh more than 5,000 pounds. They can detect a single drop of blood diluted into 100 liters of water. And through tiny organs in their snouts, They can feel the faint electrical pulse of a heartbeat buried under the sand. It can lock onto a trace of blood from hundreds of yards off and close the gap in a burst most prey never even sees coming. This is the most lethal predator the ocean has ever produced. But here is the part people skip past, and it matters more than the teeth. Being an apex predator is not really about size or speed. It is about position. The definition of an apex predator is an animal that nothing hunts. It sits at the top. Everything beneath it organizes its entire life around avoiding it, and above it, there is nothing at all. That is what apex means. The ceiling. For as long as anyone had studied them, science treated the great white as exactly that ceiling. In all those years of watching them, no one had ever documented a single animal hunting a healthy adult great white as prey. Not once. Sure, orcas had been seen bullying and occasionally killing great whites in a few specific places. Sure, big sharks sometimes clashed over a carcass. But a creature that hunted, killed, and ate a fully grown great white as prey on purpose was not in the model. It was never supposed to be possible, which is precisely why nobody in that room wanted to say out loud what Alpha Tag was beginning to tell them. If this is the kind of question that pulls at you, the kind where the ocean quietly shreds everything we thought we had figured out, take 1 second and subscribe to Reef Discovery. Everything on this channel circles the same uncomfortable idea that the water is hiding far more than it ever shows us. Subscribing is how you make sure you are in the room the next time it shows us something it was not supposed to. 2 numbers, so here they are, and I am going to give them to you exactly the way the recorder gave them up, one at a time, because the order is what makes this so hard to sit with. The first number is depth. At one point, the tag plunges to nearly 1,900 feet, straight down in a matter of minutes, and on its own, that reading is already wrong. Great whites are not deep-water animals by nature. This is a species built for coastal shallows and the bright upper layers of the open ocean. The zone where sunlight still reaches and prey is thick. They spend the overwhelming majority of their lives in the top 1,000 feet. A sudden vertical drop to nearly 1,900 feet in minutes is not a foraging dive, and it is not curiosity. That is a plunge into a black, crushing world where the sunlight is long gone. The kind of place a coastal hunter like Alpha has no reason to be and no easy way back from. Alpha was almost certainly not diving on her own. Something was taking her down, and whatever it was could drive to that depth quickly and powerfully, hauling a 500-pound apex predator with it like dead weight. It did it in minutes. No sound, no trace, nothing. And that was only the first number. Then the team looked at the second number. Temperature. And this is the one that turned a strange anomaly into a conclusion nobody in the room wanted to reach. At 1,900 feet off the Australian coast, the ocean is genuinely frigid, down around 46 degrees Fahrenheit. So, if the tag had simply popped off and sunk, or if Alpha had died and drifted down with the recorder still attached, 46 degrees is exactly what you would expect it to log. Cold getting colder as the depth climbed. That is not what it logged. The temperature went up. It climbed from around 46 degrees to a sustained 78 degrees Fahrenheit. A spike of more than 30 degrees in the wrong direction at the bottom of a freezing dive. And it did not flicker up for a second and fall back the way a dying sensor might. It held. A stable 78 degrees, nearly 1,900 feet down, in water that should have been close to freezing. There is essentially one explanation for a reading like that. A tag does not record a warm, steady 78 degrees at extreme depth in cold ocean unless it is no longer in the ocean. It was inside something. Something with a warm interior. Something alive that had taken Alpha, tag, and all and carried her down into the dark with the meal still inside it. Sit with what that means for a second. Something out there took a 500-pound great white, dropped nearly 1,900 feet with her, and then simply carried on with its day. And not one person on the surface saw a thing. No fin, no disturbance, no witness. The only reason any of us know it happened is that a scrap of plastic washed up on a beach 4 months later, carrying the receipt. This is what Riggs kept going back over, reading and rereading, because part of him refused to accept the numbers were real. He could not make them say anything else. The shark had been eaten, and the only question left was the one that would take him years to answer. What is big enough and warm enough to do that? The suspects. Once the team accepted the unthinkable, that alpha had been eaten, they started working through every candidate the ocean could offer up and watched each one collapse in turn. First suspect, the orca. We know killer whales can kill great whites because we have watched them do it. Off South Africa especially, orcas use a technique that is almost surgical. They flip a great white upside down, which locks it into a paralyzed trance-like state, then open it up and eat the nutrient-rich liver, often leaving the rest. A feeding orca, its gut full of warm prey, could plausibly land near that 78-degree reading, so temperature alone did not rule it out. But the depth did. Orcas are not deep divers. They hunt near the surface, and even their most extreme recorded dives fall well short of 1,900 feet. Second suspect, the sperm whale. Here is an animal that genuinely lives in the deep, diving thousands of feet after squid, far deeper than alpha ever went. The big males stretch past 60 feet and weigh more than 100,000 pounds, and their throats can take a 9-foot shark with ease. On depth alone, no problem. But the temperature was wrong, this time in the opposite direction. Sperm whales are warm-blooded mammals, running internal temperatures up around 97 to 99 degrees. 78 is far too cool for the inside of one. And they are squid specialists, built for soft-bodied prey, not 500-pound predators near the surface. Wrong temperature, wrong diet. Out. Notice the shape of this, because it is the whole case in miniature. Every suspect big enough to reach that depth was the wrong temperature. Every suspect with the right temperature could not reach that depth. The data had quietly drawn a box around the killer, and almost nothing in the entire ocean fit inside it. Then the team looked at other big sharks, a giant tiger shark maybe, or an oceanic whitetip. A tiger shark will swallow almost anything that fits, but neither grows large enough to take a 9-foot great white whole. The biggest tiger sharks cap out around 14 feet. And to swallow a 9-foot shark whole, you do not need to be a little bigger than your prey. You need to be enormously bigger. The math would not close. Someone even floated a colossal squid. But the sustained warmth inside the tag instantly ruled out a cold-blooded invertebrate, an animal whose insides are simply the temperature of the sea around it. So, one by one, every ordinary answer fell away. Orca, wrong depth. Sperm whale, wrong temperature and wrong diet. Big sharks, not big enough. Squid, cold-blooded. And as the list burned down to nothing, the team was left staring at a possibility that was somehow both completely obvious and almost too strange to say with a straight face. The predator revealed, what if the animal that ate the great white was another great white? Not a slightly bigger rival that got lucky in a brawl, not a territorial scuffle that turned fatal. A great white of a size that most marine biologists had never seriously put on the table. A shark so large that a 9-foot, 500-pound great white was, to it, just a meal. And the team did not guess their way there. They reasoned it, and the temperature was the key that turned the lock. Most sharks are cold-blooded, their body temperature matching the water. But great whites are not most sharks. They belong to the mackerel shark family, and they carry a rare adaptation called regional endothermy. Using a specialized web of blood vessels, they trap and recycle the heat their own muscles generate, keeping their core, their eyes, their brain, and their gut significantly warmer than the surrounding sea. Now follow where that leads, because this is the hinge of the whole case. An ordinary great white stomach might run somewhere around 65 to 70 degrees, cooler still in deep water. 78 is too warm for a normal mid-sized shark, but a much larger great white changes the entire equation. More body means more muscle means more heat, and more mass means it holds that heat far better against the cold. Inside the gut of a truly enormous great white, a steady 78 degrees is not impossible at all. It is exactly what you would expect. The depth fit too, once the team let go of the assumption that great whites stay shallow. These sharks have been tracked plunging past 3,000 feet in the open ocean, so 1,900 feet is well within reach of a very large white. That left one question. How big does a great white have to be to swallow a 9-foot one whole? Researchers who study this kind of predation point to roughly twice the length of the prey. Run the numbers from the tag, and you land on a predator somewhere around 16 feet long and weighing more than 2 tons. A shark sitting right at the upper edge of what we believe great whites can reach, and maybe a little past it. If you let yourself reconstruct the moment, the picture is brief and merciless. A larger shadow rising from below, the way great whites attack, a single committing strike, and then the long descent. With the meal still inside, the tag never recorded the ambush. It recorded the aftermath, the plunge, and the warmth. But the aftermath is more than enough to tell you how it must have begun. And here is where the whole thing pays off, because the answer was not some different kind of creature at all. It was a great white, just one bigger and ranging deeper than anything science has ever formally documented. The team landed on a female of exceptional size. Females grow considerably larger than males, and the biggest confirmed females approach 20 feet and weigh over 4,000 pounds. And the data did not stop at the tag. When researchers laid alpha recorder alongside tracking information from other large white sharks moving through that same water, it lined up. The body temperatures logged from those bigger animals matched the warmth recorded inside the tag. The depths, the ranges, the movements, all of it fit an enormous female great white that nobody had ever put on a record. She had been there the whole time, moving through those waters, doing exactly what apex predators do. And one morning, in 2003, she crossed paths with a 9-foot great white and treated it like breakfast, then slipped nearly 1,900 feet into the dark to digest it where no one would ever see. I do not know how to make that less alarming, so I'm not going to try. And the part that should bother you most is still coming. The deeper truth. Here is what almost nobody talks about, because the headline is just too good on its own. A giant great white eating another great white whole. That is the kind of sentence that makes you quietly cancel a beach holiday. But the headline is the least disturbing part. Once the team confirmed what happened to Alpha, they went back through the record, hunting for patterns they had shrugged off before. And what they found stretches far past one morning off Australia. Great white preying on great white is not a freak accident. It is a documented behavior, and the evidence has been sitting in plain sight the whole time. Marine biologists have long known these sharks are cannibals. Bigger individuals dominate smaller ones at feeding sites, and juveniles are genuinely at risk from the adults sharing their water. The behavior even starts before birth, in the womb, where developing pups consume their unhatched siblings, a strategy so well established it has a name in the textbooks. Dead great whites have turned up bearing massive bite wounds with an arc and a serrated edge that could only come from the jaws of another great white, and living ones have been photographed carrying old, healed-over scars in that same unmistakable shape. Sharks bitten by one of their own that somehow swam away. And it is not only their own kind. In recent years, researchers tracking a pregnant porbeagle, a smaller cousin of the great white, recovered data showing the animal had been attacked and very likely eaten by a larger predator, with a great white among the prime suspects. It was described as the first documented predation of a porbeagle anywhere in the world. The lesson keeps repeating itself. Being a large, dangerous shark does not place you safely at the top. It just means whatever eats you has to be larger and more dangerous still. Taken one at a time, you can explain any single case away. A territorial spat, a squabble over a carcass. But you cannot lay the whole body of evidence end to end, stretch it across decades and oceans, drop alpha tag on top, and still call all of it nothing more than aggression. The very largest great whites do not just compete with the smaller ones. Sometimes they eat them. This is apex predation happening inside a single apex species, and the food chain everyone assumed ended at the great white does not end there at all. And if we got that wrong about the most studied, most filmed, most famous predator in the entire ocean, the obvious next question is the one that should keep you up tonight. What else are we wrong about? Why we never see it? There is a reason something this size could stay hidden, and it comes down to one brutal fact. We have barely looked. The open ocean is almost incomprehensibly vast. The Pacific alone covers around 60 million square miles. Put all the world oceans together, and you are past 100 million square miles of water, of which we have meaningfully explored only a sliver. Everything below 1,000 feet is, for all practical purposes, invisible to us. There are credible accounts going back a century, from fishermen and naval crews and researchers, of great whites at 20 feet or more, reports we long ago filed away as fish stories. Whatever has been happening down there, we were simply never there to see it. And it gets worse because even when we do study great whites, the numbers are tiny. The global population sits in the low thousands, and the handful ever fitted with a working tag is a fraction of that. We are drawing sweeping conclusions about an entire species from a few dozen individuals. Worse still, there is a bias baked into which ones we tag. Researchers work where sharks come close to shore, and those tend to be the younger, smaller animals. The 20-foot females, the ones that might do what was done to Alpha, live out in the deep, where the boats are not. It is like trying to understand wild elephants by only ever studying the calves near the fence. The biggest, oldest females, the ones who matter most to this story, are exactly the ones we have never managed to see. The Queen of the Deep. Here is what I keep coming back to. We never named her. Not the shark that was eaten, the other one. The Predator. She has no designation, no record, no photograph tied to her. She moved through that water, did the single most remarkable thing science has ever inferred about her species, and slipped away again without ever being seen. If you want a sense of what an animal like that might look like, picture Deep Blue. Deep Blue is real. She is the largest great white ever reliably filmed, a female estimated at around 20 feet long and roughly 4,500 pounds. Captured on camera in 2013 off Guadalupe Island, Mexico, and thought to be somewhere near 50 years old. She makes a shark cage look like a toy, and I want to be completely clear about this because it matters. There is no evidence that Deep Blue had anything to do with Alpha. They were filmed in different oceans, and no one has ever connected them. I bring her up only to prove one simple, unsettling thing. Great whites really do reach that size. The animal that took Alpha was not a monster out of a story. It was a shark, an ordinary shark of an extraordinary size, doing an ordinary shark thing. Somehow, that is worse than any legend. We like to think of the ocean as something we have basically solved. We mapped it, named it, sorted it into tidy zones, and felt like we understood what was in the water. We do not. We are still describing brand new species of large marine animals decades into the satellite age. And if we are still meeting animals that size for the first time, the confident belief that we have already met the largest great white in the sea looks less like science and more like wishful thinking. Alpha Tag drifting up onto that beach 4 months later was a message in a bottle from the deep, and it read, in effect, that something is down here you did not know about. Something bigger than you thought. Something that takes your apex predators and dives nearly 1,900 feet to finish the meal in private. The great white spent millions of years becoming the most feared predator in the sea. And somewhere in the cold black water off southwestern Australia, something looked at one of them and saw lunch. So, here is my ask, and I mean it. Somewhere out there, the next recorder is already attached to the next animal, quietly logging the next thing we are not supposed to know. When it washes ashore, I am going to make the video about whatever impossible thing it recorded. Subscribe to Reef Discovery now so you are here when it does, because the ocean is not finished surprising us. And then, tell me in the comments, was a 16-foot great white really big enough to swallow Alpha whole? And how big do you think the largest great white still out there is? The one we have never tagged and never filmed? Drop your honest number and tell me whether a story like this makes you want to get in the water or never go near it again. I read every reply.